it is a pleasure to welcome several speakers to the floor. So to discuss this very interesting question of sharing experiences in terms of accessing finance, we'll have with us three creative entrepreneurs, three representatives of the cultural and creative sectors, and Andrus as well with us. I'll have the pleasure to moderate this session, and I very much look forward to the discussion. Don't hesitate also to post in the chat questions you may have for our panelists, or also share your experience in accessing funding, challenges you may have faced, tips you may have for the other participants. This is your floor, really. So today I'll have the pleasure to discuss with Aet Laigu, who is the founder and manager of Meteoriit, an audiovisual production company, but also Tölpt, the CEO of Music Estonia and representative of the music industry. And also we'll have a guest from Southern Europe with us, with Alessandro Borrelli, who is the founder and director of Sarraz Picture, which is an audiovisual production company, and much more, in fact. But we'll have the opportunity to discuss all that during this exchange. So without further ado, I'd like to start sort of get the ball rolling, let's say, and start discussing with our speakers. So first, perhaps with Aet, I'd like to discuss with you a bit your experience in accessing funding so far, and what have been, let's say, your experience in accessing funding. What kind of funding have you applied to, and what has been your experience so far with accessing funding, and especially loans, of course, because we are mostly discussing debt financing today. Aet, if you want to pitch in on that.
Yes, thank you. Welcome everyone, and it's great to be here. I'm just asking, maybe it's possible to change the screen setting so that we can actually view the people whom we are talking to, because I'm looking at the slide and it's not very interesting, you know. Yes. Sorry, yes. just a small remark. It's easier to see who's reacting and who's talking when we have a different view set.
That sounds good. Everyone, please remember the slide, and those are the people who are with you. I'll leave the screen to them.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it makes a bit more sense to me.
Yeah,
I can yeah, see who's talking. Well, yeah, I'm mainly active in the audiovisual sector, and this is quite a complex sector in terms of financing, because each project is pretty much a prototype. So there is no standard project. We every time start from zero in terms of what the content is, who's the filmmaker, who our partners are, what's the financing strategy, the budget, everything. So basically, it's every project and a set of projects is unique. In that sense, a producer has to be really creative and each time find new ways of financing that correlate with a particular project. Often, well, in Estonia, it's basically, there are these national projects that are very straightforward in Estonian language with a few producers, and there are pretty much 2-3 funds that support them. And for them, the main need is basically financing a cash flow. So to speak, then if you look into the loans, it's the bridge funding. You need to finance the cash flow for these projects. And then there are international projects, international co-production projects that are often financed over a period of longer time, like sometimes 3 to 5 years, where there are several collaboration partners. And these projects also, in addition to a bridge funding, they would look also what is called a gap funding. Which is kind of a top-end funding, and this is something I don't know that is offered in Estonia at the moment, but it's internationally it's offered, and this is more of a to the side of a risk investment for the bank. So because they come in last and they get out first. So this is sort of the situation. It's not a loan. But it's in investment based on the evaluation of the distribution agreements and what's the setup there on the back end. So this is basically, and then the third thing is really like a very, very risky, where the financier comes in as a co-producer investor. So this is a very high risk investment, basically something similar to let's say, investment banking, you know, where you go into startups and you know, maybe 1 in every 10 films is successful. You never know. So but that's the situation. And but the main need for all producers through every production is to cash flow, because often the fundings, they come in after, as Andrus said. And this is something that is not readily available before Finora in Estonia, really, because often what the film producers do is they approach their personal contacts, you know, my personal rich friend, who will then sort of back me on the cash flow based on the financing agreements that I have. It's fairly safe, so it's a very safe loan for them, and often they don't even take you know, ask for an interest. You know, it's like because they know they will get the money back. So in that sense, Finora is expensive, as Andrus also mentioned. But on the other hand, if producers would know about this possibility and they can plan it into the budget, it's maybe easier, you know, than every time look for this one rich man to, or a woman, to support the cash flow process of your project. So this is where basically the 3 main things our audiovisual sector needs. And from the financing part, and which I have also looked into and used.
Thanks a lot, Aet. And perhaps let's stay in the audiovisual world for a bit and ask for the experience of Alessandro, who has a different context, works in a different country. Do you observe the same types of needs, financing needs, Alessandro, and do you have the same, let's say, observations in relation to the different funding options available?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. As you say before, I work in Italy, and the system which describe my colleagues from Estonia is quite similar also in Italy, because the main funds which we receive come from the industry. It means public television broadcast, and from the public fund, regional or national. But the great problem for us is the money come when habitually the 80% of the money come when you deliver the movie, you know. And for this reason, the problem is the cash flow. For us in Italy, it's very crazy, because the bank, the Italian bank, are really, really rich, have a very strong bank, but it's a problem of education, in my opinion, because the bank don't know our work, because they think that we ask money, so because we are crazy and we will make movie, but they are able to read an agreement between RAI, which is our public broadcast, or they have fear about the public money, for example, Ministry of Culture, for example, regional, because they don't understand really well the procedure. And I work with several banks in Italy, and each time I should make a teaching with the bank where I go, and sometimes they understand, sometimes no, because then the bank are very complicated, because you talk with your referent for your area, but then the referent of your area should talk with the regional referent, and then with the national referent, and it will be quite long and quite very, very. And for this reason, it's crazy, because in Italy the bank are very, very high level in terms of, for example, Unicredit, for example, Intesa San Paolo, which I think is the main group in Europe. They don't give loans for this, or very few loans, but not regarding the project. For example, if I have a movie of 2 million euro of budget, and I show to the bank that I have 2 million euro of agreement, fund, and blah, 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 they don't are very convincing. They look only my balance, my situation, my company situation, not the balance of the movie. This is the great mistake, in my opinion, because they should not look into my balance, because the company production are very, very, very crazy balance. Because, for example, for 1 year we are developing 2 projects, and we will have a turnover very low. But the year later we will have 2 production, and we will have a turnover very high, no? And for the bank, that is only algorithm, no? They put in the algorithm and say, okay, this is not a very, very safe company, because last year have a turnover less, and next year a high turnover, no? But the French people are smarter, that the French bank are smarter than the Italian bank, and this is the reason, because enough 40 or 50 Italian producer go to some French bank to ask a loan for the production. For example, 2 years ago, I get in 2 weeks 1.5 million for the production of a movie, which was a co-production with Belgium and France. And for me, it was totally impossible to have in Italy 1.5 million in 2 weeks. It's impossible. I can work on the water, but not have 1.5 million from my bank. This is the great mistake. And I think if, for example, there are some colleagues in Europe, I mean bank in Europe, I think that here is a huge area of business that the bank are losing with us, because all the agreement and all the which we gave to the bank to be to show what we have on place are very safe, because it's national, regional. Okay, pandemia, okay, a war, but it's very, very extreme case, no? But the public broadcast, we don't have a private money on the movie, no? The private money can be really risky for a bank, I think. But the public money and the public broadcast money, in my opinion, are very safe money, because only in a very exceptional case, I think you don't reach. So this is the problem for me in Italy, but I know also from many colleagues in Europe. And it's a little bit sad that I should go in another country, ask a loan.
Thanks, Alessandro. And I think you raised the point of education and sort of dialogue between
this is the most important point.
Yeah, it is a very important one, and I think it starts here as well. I think we have the chance today to have representatives from both sides, right? And I think this is really a key as well to get the right messages across. I want to go to Aet now. So we had the perspective of the audiovisual industry, where we discussed quite a bit already the cash flow issues, the kind of project-driven, let's say, financing versus company-driven financing. Can you also perhaps share your experience from the music sector in Estonia? What is your experience so far? How has it worked? Aet, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's very glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And I represent here then the Music Industry Development Center and Export Office Music Estonia. And I see some of the members also here that we have. It's glad to see here the audience. So it's in the music sector, it's the same thing. I can continue with the same keywords. It's the cash flow thing. It's the investment, what have been already said here. And it's in case of our organization, my experience, it's our annual budget comes from also the public sector, then the EU projects and Enterprise Estonia, which is also connected with the EU funding. And so this is also the cash flow thing, and it's very important that we have such a tool that we have at the moment, a creative loan tool to access and to cover the working capital or the running costs that have been already mentioned before. So this is the primary thing, and I think as well in our example as well, the music businesses that we have, this is very important that we can access the EU projects. We can bring, we have the capacity to bring EU funding here, but as well as we know that some of the part of the money arrives later if the final report is already presented, and that's why you need cover the cash flow. And the investment part is in the music sector as well, very important. That here already Andrus mentioned, it was glad to hear that, for example, the music studios or who need to invest into technical equipment or so on. And this is, those are the same keywords in the music sector as well. I think we are connected to the similar issues here in the creative sector in all of us.
Yes, thanks a lot. Perhaps a quick question as well, a more specific question, and perhaps can start with you, Ave, on the type of loans you have been requesting so far in terms of amounts, in terms of maturity of the loans. So simple question here, but what kind of ticket are you asking for when requesting a loan typically?
2 or 3 times already we have used a creative loan from Finora then, and as soon as I arrived here, then I arrived in Music Estonia in September. Then I was already like introduced the creative loan, so it was very I was very happy that we have this kind of instrument, because as I had said that I don't want to like search for the rich man, so it's it would have been very complicated to start without this instrument, and I know a couple of years ago that was the thing, the only possible thing to do to cover the cash flow, for example. And if we talk about usual banks, then it's not that flexible as we see in creative loan terms. So it's really flexible here with this, and so my experience is connected concrete with this creative loan that was offered already then. And the amount you asked, or also it's like 40,000, some kind of, yeah, this kind of amount usually, and it's straightly connected with the EU projects that we have. Today we have 3 projects, and our main aim is here to develop, spread knowledges, to connect people. So it's not based on like earning a big amount of income that we can cover the cash flow. So it's the aim of the development center is different, yeah, and that's why we need to focus on the projects and sharing knowledges and that kind of activities primarily, and that's why we need then such an instrument, and that's have been my experience at the moment. Has been.
Thanks. I think we see a sort of pattern here with a sort of public funding with sort of a clear payment schedule, and then the loan pitching in order to cover the cash flow, and there are some similarities here between our 3 panelists. Perhaps Aet, in terms of loan amounts, duration, is it a similar experience for you, or how is it for you?
Yeah, it's as I said, it's each project is different, but normally, I mean, producers have to also think economically, in the sense that the cost doesn't become too expensive. You know, so you try to get out of the loan as soon as possible, obviously, because their interest is a cost as well, you know, and so. For in my personal experience, I try, you know, I tend to take loans only when and if I need them, and for a short period of time as possible. So this is how I personally do things. And I have only one experience with Finora last year, and it was a very good one. It was a very quick in and out activity. So we basically, and the amount was roughly 70,000 euros, I believe, to cash flow the production costs of an ongoing production, which was waiting for the state funding to come in. And that was due to the crisis. We lost some funding, so there was a crisis funding, and we were expecting that, but we needed to cash flow the production because we had started filming, and we in another country away from Estonia. And if there would not have been this, we would have maybe still be wives and husbands of some Jordanian kings and queens, and not returning back home. So you never know. So I think it went well this time.
But
I just wanted to say that I think it's very good comment from the educational point of view, that on one hand, definitely you need to educate the financial sector companies. We also took some time to understand the sector before we decided to apply for this facility to offer it, because there are those specific nuances and cash flow problems. But on the other hand, I'm also very happy to hear that the companies and organizations who are taking creative loan are already well understanding also the nature of financial obligations. As a kind of a banker, I should be sad when I return a loan, because then I don't earn interest rate. But in fact, we view this also as part of a, let's say, educational journey, that those who take loans, that we want to make sure that they also understand that it is an obligation, and if they can return it faster, it's absolutely fine. They should not kind of keep it just for a cushion, because it is definitely a cost. And so far our experience has been indeed that those who take loans are very critically viewing the cost side, and in that sense, as I said, as a banker, I should be sad, but I'm not, because that makes me kind of happy to see that it is understood not as a grant but as a loan, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrus. And I think we talked about education. It goes both sides really, and that's also what you flagged in your presentation, right? But yeah, there is a need to understand the specificities of the cultural and creative sectors, the sectors you're investing in, and conversely, the entrepreneurs need to understand the strings attached, let's say, to loan financing and how that works. And perhaps we've discussed a bit the let's say the type of projects you have, let's say, where you have applied loan financing, and the type of, let's say, conditions that were attached to that. What have been the lessons learned from the process, and what did you learn as creative entrepreneurs from this kind of applying to loans? And have you learned anything in terms of how to pitch your business, how to approach the financials? What have been the lessons learned from your side, really, from this kind of education process that goes both ways? Perhaps Alessandro, if you want to start, and then. So
the question is how we interface ourselves with the bank.
Yes, yes. How you had the interaction, and what what have you learned from that experience, really?
No, as I said before, the problem is that in these 80 years, I work with 5 or 6 banks, very different in Italy. The last one is a bank which is also not only Italian. And in each bank, I find always advisor, for example, for real estate, advisor for the food chains, but never advisor about the creativity chain. But I am not an artist. I am an artist in some way, but I am a man. I am someone who manages an enterprise, not NGO or a charity section. So for this reason, I have a very difficult to talk with some about figure with some referencing bank, because they don't know what we do, no? And I always make a long work of teaching to I show the contracts, I show the agreements, I show also the timeline, because, for example, it's very important to understand that we get the money in the total of the total of the money on the delivery of the project. And so for this reason, it's always very hard to be clear with these people, because they don't have an advisor. So my idea, and in Italy we do with you last year, 2 years ago, was before COVID, a conference here in Torino, where I am, where we invited some bank, some Italian, some people from some Italian bank in Rome, in Torino, 2 times, to show like today, to talk about our problem, to talk about our necessity. No, I think this is the way to continue, you know, because maybe they will understand, because if they can manage, for example, the tool which give the European Union for example, the fund, you know, for the grant, I think that can be very useful. It's something that should start, I would say. But we know very well that they are bank and we are entrepreneur, not I know what is it. No?
Thanks. So core tip is really, and kind of start this dialogue and try to have in as much as possible this kind of exchanges, regular exchanges, so that you don't start from scratch every time. Thanks a lot, Alessandro. Ave, do you want to go to? Do you have any tips to share? Any advice for our participants as well, so they gain some time as well?
Yes, I think it's very basic things. You have to have definitely a very good overview of your budget, of where the money comes from, because as been said, it's a loan. So it's you have to know where the money comes back from. You have to have certain project, or that would be very you have to present those documents and you have to have a very good overview of your finances. So this is the primary thing, I think, and then you have the resources that you know that your money is coming from back. If it's in an investment for other music companies, I think they should have also the long view of the resources of the financial plan, and this is one thing, like the educational side, that we're trying to do as well, the financial education. So the basic tips, the basic things if you need to know as a company owner. So those will apply also when you're applying a creative loan, for example. So and I think those are the basic tips. And it has been said already that it's a monthly cost, and then you have to calculate this in as well, and you have to like really good calculation and good overview of your documents and what are you planning. But as we know, I'm really glad that we have trust in the creative sector. We know how much it brings, the additional worth in the economy, for example. So it's so glad to hear that now in COVID times especially we have reached those numbers, and we have like comparison with other sector, and we know better the creative sector side at the moment, and it's I think it's very important that we can apply. The creative sector has a place now where to apply as well, more flexible, because I have big trust that we have the people that are working in creative sector have a good overview of their finances, and that's the main thing, I believe.
Thanks a lot. And I think it also complements quite well what Alessandro was saying also, and having a clear timeline with, because in the cultural and creative sectors we always have lots of different revenue streams and which each have their sort of own timeline as well, and it's important to make sure that all that is properly taken into account. Aet, do you see anything to add, or perhaps Andrus?
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm in a bit privileged situation here because I've studied economics as my first degree, so I've never had any difficulties with understanding numbers and talking to the financiers. So it's, yeah, for me it's just a given. But what I would you know, could suggest from my part, I'm sitting on the board of Estonian Producers Union now, and you know, I don't know how it works in Italy, but it probably might be a good idea for the Italian Producers Union or similar organization to really set up a meeting with the bank representatives and bring on board also the financing bodies, that they sit around one table and really see that the banks see that this is a guarantee. You know, the document that they provide is a guarantee. It's just, you kind of just need to sit around one desk, and it has to come from the producer side, I think, this action. And yeah, and what else? I mean, everything is pretty much covered here. So it's just, you need to really understand if you need the loan, if there is no other way. You know, I think this is one thing to really consider seriously, if you can cater for the loan, because it's a responsibility. And yeah, and but it's good to have this option available, you know, because it hasn't been for a long time in Estonia, as you say. In the past, we've always been looking for the rich person to rely on.
Yeah,
so, but if I can say something, the suggestion is very smart and it's useful, and I do in the past in 2 different guild of producer this suggestion. We can go together to talk with the bank and explain very well and very. But there are a great problem in Italy, that we really divide between a huge company, we can say media company, which have any problem, because as I mentioned before, the problem is that the bank look the capacity of the company, not the project, the single project, no? And when a huge company go to the bank, is already the door are always open. And the problem is for the small and the medium company, which is the greatest part, I would say. I am a medium company, for example, but there are many smaller that work very well. But the bank have some problem, because they evaluate always the capacity, the global capacity, and not the single project. And we should say that we are not so able, this is a great problem from Italy, I think, to make a strong network, because at the end, someone is looking for their own problem, and this is a little bit frustrating for me. And so I proceed.
No, yeah, I see. I mean, you are very nicely illustrating your own problem, so to speak, you know, not to be rude, but yeah, it's always more complex for small and micro and medium-sized companies all over the place, and that's why it's maybe, if you can't really look for the assistance of the big companies, it's always it's difficult. It's always difficult to create a community and to collaborate on any level, yeah. But you know, it's I think here even the key would be really get the financial institutions to understand that the letter of commitment or the agreement you make with the film fund is an actual guarantee, you know, that they take it as a guarantee. It doesn't even matter, you know, if it's small business or big business. If the bank understands that this is a guarantee, that it will get its financing back, then it doesn't really need any other guarantity.
Yeah, it depends always on the people you are talking with. For example, with the last bank which I'm working, I was lucky because one of the director is very smart. But in another moment, you find some who is less active and less. So it's depend. But for me, it's not a problem. It's not a great problem. But I agree with you. It is a great occasion to build a network. But I find some difficult.
I think there is a kind of lessons learned here, which is that there is an opportunity to sort of develop common tools and solutions. Of course, it needs to be tailored to the specificities of the companies, to the specificities of the projects, but to build tools and shared resources that can help entrepreneurs in pitching their projects in the right way, in a way which is understandable by financial intermediaries. And that's also perhaps something that could be developed with financial intermediaries themselves. And I don't know, Andrus, if you want to react to that. Otherwise, I see some questions in the chat that we can perhaps raise. And there was also some points about the diversity of companies working with smaller and larger companies. Perhaps you want to react to that as well.
Yeah, I can only say that it's kind of inevitable that larger companies have better relations with banks, because banks, by the end of the day, are kind of risk mitigating organizations, and for them to see larger partners automatically means less risks. So that's why also there is a need to have more market players. I have to apologize, I don't know much details about the Italian financial sector, but at least in Estonia and Lithuania, the financial sector is dominated by just 2 or 3 large banks. So it's very concentrated. And if those couple of banks are not interested in creative sector, then basically 80% of the market is gone. So then you're left with just a slice of it. And I also think that it should be natural that also in creative sector, the same way like in other sectors, you do not have to rely only on rich friends or neighbors, but there are financial products the same way as there are products for IT companies, there are products for factories, there should be products for creative sector as well. And it should not be kind of a exception or surprise. Oh, I could get a loan. Of course you should, because as we learned from presentations today, the share of GDP of creative and culture sector in Europe is a huge 400 billion euros, which is a very big amount. And even I have to admit I was kind of positively surprised that even in Estonia and Lithuania, you have tens of thousands of people working in this very broadly defined sector. So not to have financial products for this kind of a sector sounds actually very ridiculous, that it doesn't exist or didn't exist before. And here I think again we come to the structure of financial sectors, that large banks, they can make very nice business by giving mortgage loans to consumers or loans to large companies, and that's why smaller financial sector companies are actually probably even better equipped to launch such products. And I'm very happy that EIF was ready to cooperate with us, despite us not being a bank, but another financial institution. So I think it's room for different market players, and yeah, we just need to work from our side to get our cost of capital cheaper, so that we can offer also cheaper loans to our customers.
Thanks a lot, Andrus. And I think that's a very valuable point here as well, to sort of stress the structure of the financial sector and how that affects as well the way the cooperation between the cultural and creative sectors and the financial sector can take place. There is a question in the chat from Zvonimir. So the question is about specific type of loans. So he's asking about your experience in terms of being offered lending or guarantees linked solely to the success of a project, so be it a movie, a show, a new album from music. So basically the loan is repaid only if the project is successful, but if it's not, the loan is written off, it's cancelled. So have you ever seen this kind of product offered? Do you have any experience with that?
Well, in the film industry, this is it's actually Meteoriit is a good example of that kind of funding, because their financing is a loan which has to be paid back only if the project is successful. So this is what it is. And but if it comes to the banking, in my experience, or private funding, then it becomes a risk money for such funders. You know, it's an investment. They want part of the IP. You know, they become the owners of whatever they invest in with a share. So yeah, and if it's not successful, at least they will have the product in the end, which they can maybe realize later, or you know. But for film industry, it is Meteoriit that does that on a European scale.
Thanks, Aet. Alessandro, do you also have experience with this kind of approaches?
Sorry, which one? I don't understand the question.
The question is about having conditional loans. So basically, the loan is only repaid. You need to repay the loan only if your project is successful.
No. For us, it's very more basic. You should pay the loan. Stop. No, because it's loan on the financing on the movie. It's not about the successful on the movie. Anyone can give some loan on the base of the success of the movie, which is a high risky market, in my opinion, one of the more risky markets.
I see. Thanks. Perhaps feel free to react, Ave, Andrus. Otherwise, I'll move on to some other questions I have in my bag. One of them relates to the kind of loan application process. So we discussed a bit the main challenges, how it went for you. But I want to focus on one specific aspect, which is the kind of collaterals, the guarantees you offer to the bank, and how that discussion turned out for you. So basically, what have been the conditions in terms of collaterals and guarantees that you needed to present, and how did you manage to do that as creative entrepreneurs?
Unfortunately, I will start to answer. This is a very important question. Is that for us? It's very, very hard to not give personal own insurance, for example, if you are property or something like so. Sometime because we have actually TRD movie in our catalog, and we are also owner of the right of movie. Sometime with a small loan we can give our work as guarantee, no? But habitually, for all the bank ask personal guarantee. This is at least here in Italy, it's very hard to get out, you know, for the personal guarantee. At the end, I don't have fear about my personal guarantee, because when I go to the bank, I go really when I need a part of the cash flow, not a totally budget, but a part of the cash flow that I know 110% that I will have back in a very precise timeline, is only to make a bridge during the production. Is not something that is risky for me, no? For this reason, I don't have fear to give my personal guarantees. But this is what they ask.
But that's clear. So catalog of rights can work, but only for smaller amounts, and otherwise personal guarantees. And Ave, what have been your experiences there?
From my side, it's been agreements and documents, and knowing where the money comes from later on, and knowing your cash flow from that's from my side. And but yeah, the overall agreements then or documents. But basic knowledge, like which projects and when, how long they how long they last, and this kind of things, and the personal guarantee moment as well. So which the individual like guarantee, it's not my first choice, but personal guarantee as an organization from our board, then it's more like for me the individual part. Yeah, that's what I'm not preferred as a first choice. I'm not preferring as a first choice, but the personal guarantee as if you can find an organizational one person's organization in a board, then it has been also like yeah, one thing you have to you have to know who is guaranteeing the loan as well. Is it an individual or an organization, another organization? So it's that types of things at the moment from my side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the contractual arrangements as well, and the payment schedules. Yeah, thanks. Aet, do you have any? Is your experience similar, or do you have some other types of collaterals?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. As I say, yeah. We have so many different projects. So it's really over the past 15 years, I've come across every possibility or every option. You know, the banks are asking for different documents. Financiers asking for different guarantees. It just depends who needs what, and what's there also the company policy, and it's it's not a unite one thing that all the banks and financiers have as common. So it varies. Sometimes you have to give a personal guarantee. That applies mainly for also like these private money givers. They always prefer to have a personal guarantee, and yeah. But with the banks and financial institutions, in my experience, it's easier because you can provide a guarantee as a board member, or you can provide a guarantee with agreements and financial settlements with other organizations, and pending money as well. Sometimes it's a projection, and so they are more willing to take a risk, in my experience.
Thanks a lot. Perhaps that's an interesting point as well to discuss with you, Andrus, in terms of collaterals and guarantees. Do you see any difference in working with the cultural and creative sectors compared to other sectors, or?
I think it's pretty standard expectation from financial sector companies to ask a clear commitment by the board member or the owner, because very often small and medium-sized companies, if you look only their finances, they are not so strong that you can just kind of close your eyes and be sure that the money is coming from the cash flow of the company. So I would say that it's more really an example of personal commitments, and they always also have to kind of look at the proportionality, that if I said that we can issue creative loan up to 250,000 euros, then I don't know about Italy, but in Estonia it would be no point for me to ask for a personal guarantee for 250,000 euros, because I know that the court will never ever accept that in case of problems, because they will say that you as a lender should have realized that any individual will not be able to pay you 250,000, so it's not really valid. But if we talk about, I know, 20, 40, 50,000 euros, then that is kind of a acceptable ballpark. And again, to emphasize that this is more of additional security or commitment, that it is never ever a preferred source of financing for the lender. So in case of problems, you first try to still find a way together with the company, but the personal guarantee is kind of the last resort, so to say. And again, the message, no matter whether it's a creative sector, SME or other SME or any other borrower, is that in case of trouble, please talk to your lender. Your kind of first reaction is to ignore and hope that miracle will happen and everything goes smoothly. But in 99% of cases, it's not that. You should talk, and again, the main interest of the lender is to get the money back, not to draw anybody into bankruptcy and then fight in court for 5 years. So there is always a possibility to reschedule the payments if there are delays, or find other joint solutions. So in that sense, creative sector companies are not really different from any other SME.
Thanks a lot, Andrus. And I think this is an important point as well. We saw on the kind of in economic terms that the cultural and creative sectors were very much on par with other sectors of the economy. And I think also when you look at the company level, let's say, we see that at the end of the day, that the specificities of the cultural and creative sectors do not necessarily affect, let's say, so much the lending process and the say securities attached to them. And I think that's a very important point. And I would also like to stress one point you made here on talk to your lender. And I think that part about mutual trust is very important as well. So I think that's perhaps a key message that we should convey today as well. Do we have any question from the audience, or perhaps a point that some of the panelists may want to raise? I think it's also important for me to let you make a point you want to make, if you have any, of course. Not necessarily.
I can ask if Finora is considering other instruments apart from the bridge funding anytime in the future. You know, like I mentioned, there are 3 different kind of products that audiovisual sector would look for, and one of them is a gap funding, which is more risky, and also investment into a film. Is there something that you would be looking into, and is something you would like to develop further?
Yeah, we actually have been looking into it a few years ago. The main challenge is that there is not enough diversification from risk point of view, because in UK you have funds which focus only on film music, that they finance some 20 different films. They get the IP rights of the music, and then they make kind of money back from selling the music rights of those films. But in our countries, in our region, that in that sense there is no pure business case for similar type of funds, because of the smallness of the sector and let's say concentration. So we have been looking into it and continue to look at it, but in the near future probably we are not ready to come out with any additional ones. But me and my other co-founder of Finora Capital, Veiko Maribu, we are big fans of creative sector, so that's why we brought this creative loan, and we keep looking for additional possibilities. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge due to the smallness in our region, and to do it at the broader European level, then probably we kind of should be a bit bigger financial institution in order to do that. But definitely we keep looking at it, and if you have any specific ideas, definitely drop us an email. Let's try to do a bit of brainstorming there.
That's a very good point. So let's keep the...
We might invite you to visit the film... sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm losing my connection. I just was... we might invite you to a chat with the Estonian film cluster maybe in the near future about that. You know, that could be something useful. I don't know if you have been doing that already in the past, or because I don't kind of remember, maybe I wasn't there. But...
Yeah, we have talked to Estonian Film Institute. We have talked to a couple of producers, and then it kind of came out on one side the smallness, but on the other hand, it's also the way film industry is financed, mainly from state grants and support measures. And if your film kind of does extremely well, then usually the top off is for the producers. But if things go kind of badly, it's kind of a state finances there. So it was difficult to find a niche for private institutionalized investors. But again, a few years have passed since that talk. Sure, let's have it once more, either in music or film. We are open for that.
Well, the film cluster is basically uniting 20 of the largest Estonian film producers. So and the largest film festival, PÖFF, in the Eastern Europe. So it's slightly different from the film institution audience. We are the ones who are actually your clients. So it might be useful to start that conversation if we haven't done that yet. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a key message we can take away also from this discussion, that we had the first initial dialogue, right, and we discussed the need for kind of education on both sides, and this whole trust building process, dialogue process that is seems very important for everyone around the table. And I think that's a valuable lesson learned, and also pass for the next steps as well. So kind of, yeah, continue the dialogue and keep exchanging on the possibilities and opportunities as well. We focused quite a bit on the challenges as well, because we wanted to share lessons learned to all participants. But I think there are also many opportunities that we can explore together. And I think it doesn't stop today. That would be perhaps a core message as well. Don't see any more questions from the audience. I think we can move to wrap up and concluding the session.